It's Brian Preston, the Money Guy.
I think the majority of Americans aspire to reach stage 4 of their level of wealth, which is freedom.
Yep.
This is financial independence. And look, there's a great saying with this. You do what you want, when you want, and how you want.
That's exactly right. That's what we all want. I mean, money's just a tool. It's not the goal of money or finances is not to have as much of it as possible or see how big we can get the number. It is exactly this. It's to focus on those things that matter to us and be able to focus on them when we want to and be able to do it the way we want to. That's how we at our firm Abound Wealth, as well as how we at the Money Guy Show, define true financial independence.
Yeah, I mean, this is what you're working for, is that you don't have to work anymore. It is optional once you reach financial freedom. And this is, here's the thing I think you have to start thinking about when you get to stage 4 of financial independence, is that you reach freedom, you're like, wow, I'm now at the point that if I'm working Groundhog's Day, meaning every day is the same, I go to this job I don't like, you're not stuck anymore. You can start making decisions, and you actually are very purposeful of knowing what your why is, so that you wake up every day really happy.
I do think one of the things we see is a lot of folks financially get to the point to where they can leave the workforce, right?
Yeah.
They've reached a level of success where they can cover the mathematics of retirement. But we always tell them there's another psychological thing that you really have to have mastered if you want to enjoy the next act. If you want to have a fulfilling retirement, you really need to have a grasp on what you're retiring to, not just what you're retiring from. A lot of folks think to themselves, oh, well, I hate this job. It's Groundhog's Day, and I don't want the boss, and I don't want to do the ID10T forms, and I don't want all this stuff. I just want to get away from that. Well, if you haven't spent a lot of time thinking about what am I going to retire to, you're not really entering into freedom. You're just going to be trapped by something else. And that something else might be, oh no, what do I do now?
Well, I think there's multiple components to this. First of all, have you fully stress tested? Because this is definitely, leaving to financial freedom is definitely a measure twice, cut once moment, because it's hard. It's a one-way ticket typically.
Yep.
Once you cut that you're leaving this job, it's not as easy to come back. So first of all, know that you've stress tested the plan, but then there's an emotional component too. This is something I've seen with a lot of business owners. And look, I'm going to confess, I think I would have issue with this.
Sure.
Is that I get so much fulfillment from what I do for a living. That, and I've seen this with other business owners.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I see this with other business owners, is that they're like, I have enough money, but I don't know what I would do with my days. So I think that when you talk about knowing what you're retiring, don't go from what you're retiring from or moving away from, but what you're going to. Begin with the end in mind. We use that saying all the time from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But we have a resource, Bo. We've actually talked to an expert, a person who knows a lot about this subject because they were a very successful executive that decided they wanted to chart their journey to reach retirement, but they wanted to show how can you do it well so that you actually cross that threshold without regrets.
So Fritz was actually a fan of the show, and he was so kind. He runs the Retirement Manifesto. He was so kind as to share these 10 commandments of retirement. So if this is something you're thinking about entering into retirement, or you want to figure out how do I plan for retirement or plan for financial independence, go out to the website, moneyguy.com/resources. This is a free deliverable available for you. 10 commandments of retirement. These are things that Fritz kind of figured out as he was working towards the journey, got to the retirement threshold, moved into the financial independence threshold that helped him make sure it was a successful transition.
Okay. And then let's talk about once you've kind of got it all figured out and you decide, I'm going to do it. I'm actually going to move forward with financial freedom. We've talked about stress testing. That's a very important part. I'm talking about doing a full financial plan. Guys, this probably is the stage you want to have somebody in your corner. No hints there. The abundance cycle. Hopefully you remember who planted the seeds here, because that's why we do have you come learn, apply, grow, reach a level of success that you need somebody in your corner, and then you'll remember, well, Brian and Bo, they've been loading me up for years. You got to stress test, guys. Don't underestimate the power of knowing how good your retirement will be before you do it.
Yeah, this one saddens me because I don't know where this came from, because I think this came from your generation. There was this thought, and I've talked to a lot of prospects who say, you know what, as soon as I hit $1 million, I can retire. As once I'm a millionaire, I can retire. Maybe that's the case, but maybe that's not the case. If you haven't actually sat down to figure out what will that fill in the blank on the number be able to provide for me, not just next year and the year after, but all the way until I leave this earth, you probably haven't thought through it well enough. What we found is retirement is a lot less about the number and a lot more about the way you want to live. Because we see folks who retire with a lot less than $1 million and do just fine. And we see people who build a lot more than $1 million and still can't retire. It is a very individualized, customized thing.
I do think this is also the stage where you can go to more advanced charitable planning type stages where you can make sure you're thinking about, do I do like a Fidelity charitable fund where I can donate my appreciated mutual funds, appreciated stocks and other assets, get the tax deduction, maximize what goes to the charity, but also help me out in a really tax smart way. Think about those things. And then, Bo, we've even put together, we know that there are some formulas that can help you in your journey.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You have to know your numbers, right? And so we think that there are some really easy benchmarks that you can use. As you know, Brian is a huge fan. So me, by association, I have become a huge fan of Dr. Stanley's work. The Millionaire Next Door, and then his daughter carried on the legacy with the next Millionaire Next Door. And he had this great formula in there. And this is what his formula was. He said, if you want to know where you are from a wealth building standpoint, just take your age times your income and divide by 10. And so what we said is, okay, if you're a 30-year-old and you're making $50,000 a year, your net worth should be about $150,000. So 30 times 50,000 divided by 10. Well, if you don't just want to be an average accumulator of wealth, you want to be a prodigious accumulator of wealth, you should have 2 times that number. Well, every one of our 30-year-olds listening right now just did the math.
They're like, what?
There was like an audible gasp.
Yeah, because by the way, Bo, 30 years of age, I did not have $300,000.
Not even.
To be a prodigious accumulator of wealth, you were, according to this calculation, you're supposed to have $300,000. Now look. Fast forward, and if you're 45, 50 years of age, this formula is spectacular.
Yep.
And I would encourage everybody who's over 40, do respect the Millionaire Next Door formula, which once again is your age times your income divided by 10.
That's right.
Super simple. But all of our younger listeners, man, this is why it's lucky that we're nerdy. We're smart, nerdy, and we love creating content. Because, and Bo, I'm going to give you credit. You came up with this hack. Because this is a Millionaire Next Door hack for those under 40 years of age. And it's a really simple, slight manipulation to the formula, but it's going to make the world of difference to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to, but also taking into account when you're young, you haven't had enough time for the original formula to work. It's not fair for you to be judged off your army of dollar bills when you've only been in the workforce for 8 years.
That's right.
I mean, you'd have had to have started saving when your mom put you out of the womb to reach some of these things. So this is a much better chance to adjust, to give you time to catch your footing, start building the army of dollar bills, and then giving them enough time, that third component of the wealth, 3 components of wealth, so that it is have a chance of success.
So if the Millionaire Next Door formula is age times income divided by 10, our adjustment for folks under 40 years old, and that's what we're quantifying as being young, is you take your age times your income divided by 10 plus the number of years you have until you turn 40. So in our example, if a 30-year-old is making $50,000 a year, in order to be an average accumulator of wealth, they would just take 30 times 50,000 divided by 10 plus 10, or divided by 20. So to be average accumulator of wealth, they should be at $75,000. That's a much more attainable level to be at than the 150 under the original formula. But if you want to be a prodigious accumulator of wealth, that person that is way out ahead of the curve, you multiply the average times 2, and someone who's really, really doing well by our metric would be at 150,000 by the age of 30. In our view, you're killing it.
Yeah, and by the way, the brilliance of this formula, as a compliment to you, is that every year it's going to go down until at age 40 you're back to the normal Millionaire Next Door formula. So this way it keeps you honest in the fact that it will eventually cross back over once you're 40, but it does not it doesn't take the wind out of your sails of building momentum towards wealth creation.
Now, we get asked this all the time. They're like, okay, great. So that's what my portfolio should be. Well, not really. This is where your net worth should be. So if you're someone who's got racked up a lot of debt, you better make sure you take that out of the number to make sure where you are, where you're supposed to be. Because a lot of folks will just take portfolio assets or just their assets. You're missing a big part of the equation. This is where your net worth should be, not just your portfolio.
Yeah, and here's the thing, because we are talking about freedom, financial independence. You can include in that net worth your equity in your
Absolutely.
house. But here's the thing. You get hungry, what do you go do with that equity?
Can't eat it.
You can't eat housing equity. So you have to make sure you are building up enough investment assets, retirement assets, so that you actually have financial freedom. I can't stand it when people, yes, you have a big net worth, but if it's all in illiquid use assets, like your primary residence, maybe you're on some beautiful beach, you got a house that you bought at the perfect time on the beach, it's going to be beautiful to sit there. It's not going to create a retirement income unless you move out and let somebody else live there. So take that into account as you're building up assets.